All right, House File 3893 is the next bill on our agenda. Chair Scott, would you like to move House File 3893 before committee and recommend that it be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce, Finance, and Policy?
That is my motion, Mr. Chair.
Chair Scott, you have an A3 amendment. Would you like the committee to adopt the amendment?
I do. This amendment came about from stakeholder discussions, and so it encourages its adoption.
Are there any member questions on the A3 amendment? Chair Liebling.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could just get a little more explanation of the amendment before it's adopted?
Certainly, Chair Liebling. Chair Scott, would you like to address the amendment?
Mr. Chair, if I might, I'm going to have my testifier to my right give more specifics on it.
Very well. State your name for the record and offer an explanation of the A3.
Yeah, my name's Dr. Stephen Gerardo, and to the amendment, the language was trying to insert information there that was going to be about trying to clarify some of the licensing boards and some of the responsibilities of other stakeholders. And actually, just this morning, we received feedback from the Board of Psychology that we're going to be speaking to them about further including some of the language that they're looking for, which is to make sure that that the large corporations are being covered by the AG's office, but individual acts of individual practitioners would be within the boards. And we're refining that language as often happens in bills.
Chair Liebling.
That's fine, Mr. Chair, thanks.
Very well. Seeing no other member discussion, we will take a voice vote on the A3. All those approving say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The A3 is adopted. Chair Scott, please tell the committee about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House File 3893 would regulate artificial intelligence from engaging in psychotherapy and counseling with human beings. Legislation has passed in Illinois, Utah, and Colorado. Similar bills are pending in many other states. The U.S. Congress seems to have little bipartisan agreement these days, but they do agree that AI being involved in mental health therapy and counseling is deeply problematic. A group of Minnesota mental health professionals have been working for many months with legislators to draft a bill that will control the use of artificial intelligence in mental health therapy settings. This therapy needs to be provided by an educated, trained, and licensed mental health professional, not a chatbot. We have all read horrifying news stories of people who have committed suicide after being encouraged to do so by the computer they have been talking with. Members, a few of these articles, I don't know if they made it into the packets or not. Okay, good. One of those, a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, recounts the tragic suicide of a man in his 30s. He was experiencing serious trouble in his marriage and, quote unquote, fell in love with his computer. The computer urged him to commit suicide so they could be together digitally. If he had been in the care of an actual human marriage or family therapist or psychologist or other qualified mental health provider, he might be alive today. Big Tech's answer that their systems are getting better as it learns more is not good enough. AI are supercomputers. They are not human beings who go through many years of education, thousands of hours of training, including supervised therapy, and passing rigorous and comprehensive examinations in their field. All mental health professionals licensed to perform psychotherapy have at least a master's degree, and in the case of psychologists and psychiatrists, a doctorate in psychology or medicine. I would now like to hand it over to my two experts.
We have two in-person testifiers and one via Zoom. I believe the first is Eric Mishi. Again, state your name for the record and continue with your testimony.
My name again, Dr.
Did you say?
Bishi?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll go. I'll be him. Chair, good morning. My name is Eric Mishi. I'm the CEO of SAVE, Suicide Awareness, Voices of Education. We are a 36-year-old Minnesota-based national suicide prevention nonprofit. Before I go any further, I just want to remind the members and staff and those watching the committee about an important resource that is available to all of you if you're struggling in a crisis with suicidal ideation, called 988. feel free to text it, chat it, go online. It is a resource. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's there to help you and to help others who may be struggling. One of our responsibilities at SAVE is to advocate for policies and practices that directly impact suicide prevention. That includes supporting action when something creates risk and supporting solutions that protect people. It's why we have supported efforts to regulate social media because of the documented harms it inflicts on young people and others, and it's why we support this legislation. This bill addresses a specific and growing concern: the use of AI chatbots to engage in psychotherapy and therapeutic communication. As you know and you will hear, psychotherapy is not a casual interaction. It's a clinical practice that requires training, judgment, and accountability, and requires the ability to assess risk, respond appropriately, and intervene when necessary. AI chatbots simply cannot do that. They can generate responses, they can stimulate conversation. They are robots. They do not understand the person on the other side because they are not human. They are robots. They cannot recognize when someone is at imminent risk. They are not human. They are robots. And they cannot take action to keep someone safe. In suicide prevention, these limitations matter. When someone is experiencing suicidal thoughts, the interaction they have in that moment is not neutral. It can influence what that person does next. Allowing a machine to take on the role of a therapist introduces risk where we should be reducing it, and this bill draws a clear and appropriate line. It doesn't prohibit the use of technology. It is not anti-technology, and neither is SAVE. We want to make sure that psychotherapy and therapeutic communication remains in the hands of licensed professionals, human beings, and not robots. That is a
Sir, I'll need
responsible
you to wrap up
safeguard and
as
one
quick as
that
you
will
can.
protect both young people and adults in vulnerable moments. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We will move on to Dr. Steve Girardeau. State your name again and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee. I appreciate your time. I'm again Dr. Stephen Girardeau. I am the co-chair of the Minnesota Psychological Association Legislative Committee. I'm a past president. I am the federal advocacy coordinator between APA and MPA. I am also on the Healthcare Advisory Committee of the National Small Business Association, so I do a lot with healthcare policy. I'm concerned about the way that AI has been kind of marketed as being able to have answers to everybody. And the thing is that AI, the algorithms behind it, the whole purpose of it is to get you to come back and talk to it again and monetize the conversations. It is not about trying to find solutions for an individual or to help them to change. They will use validation over and over again rather than talking about change. And it basically is designed to go further and further down the rabbit hole of where someone's going. It'll give them more and more of what they seem to be looking for. The bill seeks to regulate the AI companies, to hold them accountable for how their algorithms are used by people. And there is a great deal of misunderstanding on the part of the public about what AI actually does, including the example of the gentleman that killed himself. He believed that he could be with that AI. And this is problematic because when people have mental health symptoms, that is the worst time of their life. That is when their functioning is the least logical and they're least grounded. And that is when they're the most vulnerable. And that's where you need to have a mental health professional, not AI that is trying to get you to keep coming back and talking with the AI to monetize that. The bill has received a lot of feedback over time, and we have just received, as I mentioned earlier, feedback from the Board of Psychology, which we're going to be seeking to integrate further into it. And we continue to add stakeholders to this process, and we hope that we can be carried forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a testifier joining us virtually. Are you available? There we go. Go ahead and state your name and begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Nina Lanero. I am Executive Director for Illinois and the Midwest at TechNet. Thank you, chairs and members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak with you today on House File 3893. TechNet supports thoughtful approaches to regulating artificial intelligence in sensitive settings like psychotherapy. We agree that strong patient protections and maintaining the central role of licensed professionals is critical. We also appreciate Representative Scott's willingness to engage with us on this issue. She has been incredibly responsive and collaborative throughout the process, and I do believe that the amendment today addresses some of the issues that I'm going to speak about. So again, thank you, Representative Scott, for that. Our comments focus on ensuring the bill is clear, workable, and does not unintentionally limit responsible supervised uses of technology. First, we recommend narrowing the definition of therapeutic communication so it clearly applies to clinical therapy services, rather than potentially sweeping in general wellness or educational tools. Second, we suggest clarifying references to emotional distress by focusing more specifically on suicidal or self-harm ideation, providing clearer guidance for when safeguards should apply. Third, we encourage revisions to allow AI tools under professional supervision to support administrative functions like tracking patient progress. Without this clarity, the bill may unintentionally restrict tools that help providers deliver consistent care. Finally, we recommend clarifying that AI should not independently determine treatment decisions while still allowing it to assist in drafting routine, professionally reviewed communications. Overall, our goal is to ensure the bill provides clear, actionable standards because ambiguity can create confusion rather than compliance. Again, we've outlined these recommendations in the written testimony and submitted red lines directly with the bill author. We look forward to our continued work with Representative Scott and the bill proponents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any public testifiers to this bill? Seeing none, we will move on to member discussion. Any members who want to? Representative Finke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Scott, for your bill. I actually have a bill that's fairly similar to this. It's getting at the same problem, taking a little bit different approach around prohibitions on artificial intelligence and therapy. I appreciate what your testifier said. I think we spend far too much time talking about intelligence and not nearly enough time talking about artificial, and the understanding that chatbots and others are not self-help tools. They are products created to make you spend as much time in them as possible. And again, if it's free, you are the product. It is just gathering your information, and it does not care if you live or die. So I'm really grateful for the bill. This is something that's very important to me, and I look forward to working on these issues. As we go ahead, I do have a question about the bill, though. In the definitions for therapeutic services, you define religious counseling, but then religious counseling is just exempted from the whole bill in the final lines, and I'm just curious why all of that was exempted from the bill.
Chair Scott.
Thanks for the question. And I think probably, and I've asked most of these testifiers if they know the genesis behind that, and that neither one of them do. And I was not privy when this piece was added. I would probably venture to say, though, that they are not usually trained psychotherapists. And for that reason, that's probably the reason for the exemption. And I don't know if, there's probably nobody else in the room here that's part of the coalition of folks that have been meeting even before I started meeting with them. So that's the best I can do at this point. Representative Finke.
Representative Finke.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Scott. Yeah, I would appreciate more conversation about that. I know that there are distinctions between religious counseling and licensed therapeutic services. But given what is required of people with licenses and knowing that therapy is provided, I think we should be careful about not requiring those individuals, for example, to report the self-harm that they may be hearing from their chatbots. Other things that this bill requires should be required. So happy to talk more about that.
Representative Mueller.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Chair Scott. I support this bill. I have a question about lines 3.14 to 3.17. And paragraph A there in those lines doesn't relate to AI. It relates more to advertising or offering therapy services. And it says, unless it's conducted by an individual who's a licensed professional. And then I looked at the definition of licensed professional, and it's someone with a Minnesota license. I know a couple years ago we passed where we joined the compact with other states so that people could have their therapy done by a therapist in another state online. And so I'm just curious if this language conflicts with that compact. And then also just a concern about licensed professional. I know there are other professionals that do provide good services like menopause specialists. It's really hard to find that. You're an open book when you're in the legislature, but it's very hard. It's very hard to find those services, and they're not licensed. And so I just would worry that particular language, which really isn't addressing AI at all anyway, seems a little broad, and hope it can be narrowed.
Okay.
Thanks.
Chair Scott?
Thank you for that feedback and good points, especially on the compact, right? We don't want to be in conflict with that, so appreciate all the feedback.
Any further member discussion? Chair Liebling.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Scott, for your work on this bill. And I know we have other bills, and I don't want to take a lot of time, but I just want to put some of my concerns on the record. And we've talked about some of this. I actually think this bill gives too much to big tech. Because I'm concerned about these items that are considered administrative or supplementary support. Because as I've told you, when somebody goes to a therapist, the fact that they made an appointment with a therapist also should be private. And if they're using some kind of scheduling system, I'm concerned about where that data goes, that, everybody's going to know that they made an appointment to see this therapist that they're seeing. So I'm concerned about that if we're allowing AI to be used for that purpose. So I don't think they should be using it at all, quite frankly. And have some more guardrails around how the data, or at the very least, have some guardrails around how that data is used. The other thing I just want to point out is that in the amendments, I think that were made in the Health Committee, about sort of the protections around using a chat box for some of maybe on your website when people come to make an appointment or something, they could be interacting with a chat box. And it has here that the chat box, this is like on line 3, starting on around 3.31. If the client communicates certain things to the chat box, then the chat box is supposed to respond by saying it is not a human and you're supposed to go do something else. But ironically, that requires the chat box to analyze what that person is putting in that could be, a mental health diagnosis or condition, thoughts of self-harm or harm to others, symptoms, et cetera. So already we're using the chat box to talk to people who may be distressed and relying on it to do the right thing right here in the bill. So I would sure like to get rid of that. And then finally, subdivision 6, I heard something about this maybe being worked on a little bit, but I don't know why, maybe it's just worded wrong. The Attorney General may enforce this section against an individual other than a licensed professional. I get that, let that be handled by the boards, but a corporation or an entity. So I think we do want the Attorney General to have, so I think maybe it just isn't worded correctly and you're working on that, but those are my concerns. So, but I do appreciate the bill. I think we should make it as strong as we possibly can.
Chair Scott?
Thank you, Chair Liebling, and thank you for those really constructive suggestions. And I will start with the last thing first. I think the first piece on enforcement was that the boards could take action on individual therapists that were in violation. The enforcement with the Attorney General is for the AI itself, if it's found to be in violation. But certainly, we're happy to work on tightening that language up to get it satisfactory. And the other issues, I completely understand your concerns. And yeah, if it was we're trying to get as much collaboration in this bill as we can. And if it was up to me, we'd just put the X on it. But anyway, we're trying to work collaboratively with a lot of entities, and some of the larger counseling and therapy groups out there are already using some AI in limited ways, and so we want to make sure that we're not causing problems for them, and that at the same time, we don't want them to cross certain lines, right? So I appreciate all the constructive suggestions here today in the committee. And I don't know if either one of my testifiers have anything. Looks like Dr. Gerardo might have a comment.
So in subsection 6, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, and thank you,
Go right ahead.
Representative Liebling. So section 6, you hit exactly what happened to us, which is we started this bill with AI chatbots being banned from doing anything and being keyed to, if language came up, they had to stop the interaction and ban the interaction from continuing. And in the process of continuing to take feedback from other people, language keeps getting added, and then it goes to being drafted and the language changes again. And so I agree that the language needs to be tightened up, and the restrictions on the corporation's use of AI in any way, and they should have a limitation as soon as those languages come up, and not just about suicide as was requested by TechNet, but any kind of depression or anxiety, because someone who wants to commit suicide, they aren't going to say, I'm going to commit suicide. Do you know that men commit suicide a lot more, but also their families are the most surprised because they don't say, I'm feeling bad. They don't say, I'm considering suicide. And so having a line of that the line is they're talking about suicide is a line that is just never going to be crossed. And so I am certainly going to be working to change the language and tighten that up.
And I might add something, Chair, members. If it were up to us, we would prohibit the use of any chatbot companions, or any type of chatbot activity, whether it's considered to be a static chatbot that's referring you to resources or anything like that. From our perspective, the wider the net we can do to prohibit the use of chatbots in any type of therapeutic setting, whether it's referral or active therapy. And I want to be clear, we are not Luddites here. Technology has a place, and eventually it will evolve and it will improve, and perhaps sometime in the future, this will be an incredibly powerful interventional tool, but that time is not now. We're not even close to that yet. And so the stronger the protections you can make to protect young people and vulnerable adults from chatbot activity is something we would readily endorse. And so we think this is a good bill from the perspective of the work that it focuses on the chatbot prohibition, and would encourage your continued support in working with the author to continue to strengthen it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further discussion, Chair Scott renews the motion that House File 3893 as amended be recommended to be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce, Finance, and Policy. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails, and House File 3893 is on its way to Commerce.